Well, thank you so much for not just the invitation to be here tonight, but thank you for this award. WITA and the foundation itself, led by Steve Lamar, and of course driven by James and all the other leaders of the board. You're the most respected trade coalition of trade organizations and minds and thinkers on trade in this city have made a tremendous difference throughout the years. So I can't think of a nicer honor than to be honored by people who I so deeply respect. I want to thank Jim Colby. We miss your international views in Washington, although I will tell you that your remarks earlier tonight are already on YouTube. And the hits just keep going up, so you can expect to see that for a while. And God, I hope there's no more sponsors on that list. And I'm really excited to be part of this program with Joe Smoot Crowley, who is actually just the opposite of that. Joe is a courageous leader on trade. We get to work together on the APEC and the services caucuses, which are growing by the minute. It seems like both important to the economy, but membership in the House. But there are times you can get a little concerned about the direction of trade or the pace of trade. But I get optimistic when I look at people like Joe Crowley and his leadership. So Joe, thanks for letting me share this with you tonight. Tonight, real briefly, we ought to be celebrating the importance of trade to our economy, but we probably shouldn't be celebrating the pace of trade these days in Washington, D.C. It seems to me that we have hit a low that is dangerous for our economy in the future. We've really done nothing to promote open markets since the free trade agreement in 2007. We're not moving yet on 3 critical free trade agreements with Colombia and Panama and South Korea, all of which are critical for different reasons. TAA, Trade Adjustment Assistance, I think has been the accomplishment earlier this session has been overlooked in a major way. I credit, 2 years ago no one imagined that resolution could occur on that important issue. And in such a substantive way, yet we had our big 4 in trade and ways and means who stepped forward and crafted, I think, an excellent piece of legislation that deals with those who are impacted by trade in America's economy and that fit in with the goals of this new administration on workers and communities. And I think we ought not pass that over, but it's not brought about some of the momentum we hoped it would. And what worries me, perhaps most, is that it's not that we're just standing still on trade. That would be harmful enough, but in some ways we're moving backward on the issue. The famous observation that trade is like a bicycle. If you're not pedaling it, it falls over. If you've ever watched any of the extreme sports on TV, you know that bicycles can go in reverse as well. And today when I look at, within the House at least, and I think without enough administration resistance, we're actively moving legislation that is trade restrictive, that is protectionist, that is causing us serious problems around the world. The Buy American provisions are already, I think, creating a protectionist wave in other countries, costing us U.S. jobs here at home as companies discover suddenly they're not eligible. The NAFTA truck, the Mexican trucking issue is already brought about retaliation that is harming our ag community. Those are real jobs. The climate change border measures are already creating repercussions among our key trading partners. We're seeing issues from Chinese poultry to clove cigarettes, and now on the energy bill, protectionist issues on autos, all of which not only harm us, but invite serious retaliation. And America, when it comes to world trade, America should be the greatest defender against protectionism, not an excuse for it. And today, that's what we're seeing around the world, and it's not enough. just to be WTO compliant. Even within those restrictions, we invite retaliation and others to raise those barriers. So we, of all countries, ought to be the one that sets the example, never the excuse for protectionism around the world. You know, we are trying to create an offensive trade agenda. We are offering amendments on the floor to try to point out the flaws with the Buy American provisions that are so prevalent these days. We have small victories in amendments on the floor that got a nice number of votes to actually study what the impact on our ag community is, the loss of exports because we've not passed our pending free trade agreements. But again, we just have so much work to do, and we're anxious for this administration to lead on this critical issue. Enforcement is important, but enforcement isn't enough. You know, you rarely score on defense. And to create jobs, real jobs, the type we want to, and the number we want to, we've got to have an offensive strategy. We've got to be out there working. And And it seems to me, we all know it's not enough simply to buy American. We have to sell American. We have to be out there giving those opportunities. And if there it is, for all the negative things facing us today in trade, what I am certain of is that there is a vacuum of leadership and trade in the world today. There are huge opportunities if this country chooses to engage. If we don't take ourselves voluntarily off the field, but which continues the competition without us. But if we actively engage, I think there's great opportunities to help shape the world to more open markets, to less barriers, to real opportunity for us to compete and succeed and win in the trade area. And I actually think that this president is uniquely positioned to lead in trade. His credibility with groups that have resisted trade in the past is high. He has support in the House, leaders like Joe Crowley and Rick Larson and Adam Smith and others who can bring to bear members of this House in both parties who can pass these trade agreements. And it seems to me, too, that you can't wait for trade to become popular. It doesn't happen. I've given trade has been an integral part of every speech I've given for the last 13 years in Congress, and trade is still not very popular. And as I tell freshman members who say, you know, I'm not so sure about voting on this agreement, I'm not getting a lot of support and letters back home. If you're waiting for a parade back home on trade, you're going to wait a long time. Trade's about leadership. You never follow us. Trade about leadership. It's about opening markets. It's about explaining why we have to have the opportunity to compete and succeed and win. There is no followership. And I'm convinced that this president has ability to message, to communicate, to lead. But the trick is, it can't be just words. It has to be deeds. We're anxious for him to do that. And it's the sooner the better for America if he wants to, again, create the economic expansion he hopes. And I'll make this point. The other day, Larry Summers talked about, in a speech at Peterson, he said, paraphrasing, for those interested in trade, the issue of most importance is economic expansion. Most of us believe the other opposite is true. For those interested in the economic expansion, the highest issue is trade. The sooner we get on this field, the better. I was going to close with this stirring comment, and I was thinking, you know, like President Reagan, Mr. Gorbachev tear down these walls. I was thinking, Mr. President climb on that bike just doesn't seem to have, you know, the same pop to it. But you get the point. All of us in this room, I think, are anxious and eager and willing to help reach the trade opportunities and, as importantly, take up our trade responsibilities for the United States of America. I'm anxious for it to happen. God bless you. Thank you.